Hi again. Um, so I realize that sometimes when I'm doing these videos, I probably have a look on my face like I'm absolutely terrified. And that's actually very true. That's why mostly when I do these videos, I don't put myself on the camera. I prefer to just be the voice behind the scenes and you watch me paint or do whatever. I'm just not comfortable with my own image, and that's just the way I've always been. So if I seem a little bit awkward, and that's just because I feel like I am a little awkward. But hopefully you're getting value from watching these videos. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different. It's actually quite exciting. We're going to be working with some mixed media. This one specifically, you're going to want to use oil paint simply because acrylic paint does not mix with cold wax. Cold wax is an oil product, and acrylic paint is a water-based product, and as we all know, oil and water don't mix. So if you're going to be doing this workshop with me today, you definitely want to have oil paint, and you definitely want to be using cold wax medium. I'll get to that in further detail. So for now, let's begin. So today we're going to be using an old painting of mine that it was actually a plein air picture, and it was okay, but it's not something that I think is really going to go anywhere. And I like reusing old paintings that I'm not entirely happy with. So that's what we're going to do. If you don't have an older painting, that's fine. You can just start from scratch if you want, really. So what I've done, as you can see in this painting, is I've taken painter's tape and I've covered over some of it. So I'm not covering over the old painting completely. I am going to be having some of the old paintings show through. And we'll go through that as we go through the workshop today. And then over here, I've got my materials all set up. Again, I'm using oil paints. As I mentioned earlier, for this particular workshop, because we're using cold wax will not work with acrylic paint. So you're going to need to use oil paint. And I've got titanium white, raw umber, I've got 2 types of yellow, I've got a red, and I've got 3 blues here. I'm not necessarily going to use all of these colors, but I do have them ready to go in case I do decide I'm going to go ahead and use them. I'm also using a cold wax medium. This is Dorland's wax medium. I'm not really sold in any particular brand at this point. This is what they had at the store when I went, and I didn't want a really huge container, so this was a good size. In addition to the other tools that we just talked about, I'm also going to be using these little putty knives. You can pick them up at any hardware store. You can also use rollers, or there's larger flat scrapers that you can actually buy at art stores. They're a lot more expensive. This one was $1.50, and this set of 3 was just under $3. So, and they clean up just fine, and they're nice and flexible. So really, for the money, you can't go wrong with that. And then I'm also going to be using a separate palette board. This one I've used for lots of things. As you can see, I've cut on it as well. Just for mixing my wax, I try to keep the wax separate. Now I have to say, I've only used the wax about half a dozen to 10 different paintings so far. So I'm not an expert by any means, But I'm not an expert as far as oil painting goes either. I just know what I know from what I've been learning, and I can only share what I already know. So I don't really have a plan for this. I do have an idea that this area here, I want it to be sort of a tree branch, kind of in the foreground, over top of what I'm going to put in the background. That's pretty much the only plan I have, other than that. So what I'm going to start with, I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to use this. And I'm going to get a small palette brush. Let's mix some paint over here, some cobalt blue. Let's do some white. So we've got kind of a pale color. And when you're mixing in your wax, the recommendation is that you use 30 to 50% wax into your oil paint. Okay, so I've got that mixed, and I'm just gonna, when you're doing abstracts, it's really kind of free form, and you're just sort of seeing how things go. Like I said, I don't really have a predetermined plan for this. Now, I haven't really explained what the cold wax does, and it's kind of hard to explain in a way. It's what it does to your oil paint when you mix it in is it takes away the shine, for one, so some people might not like that. But the other thing it does is it makes it translucent. So you'll be able to see what's underneath. I know sometimes painting over an old painting feels a little scary, at least for me. The first time it did, but the result was really amazing. I was really happy with it. So I'm not as scared anymore. Although I have to say it's not not scary. It's still scary. It's just the fear has lessened a little bit. So I've got a different kind of blue here now. It's much darker. Just kind of pulling it all in here. Once you start getting more layers down, things start to emerge naturally from what you're doing. And you start to see something that looks interesting, and then it'll give you an idea of where you should be going next. Even though this is an abstract, I still end up, the work is still very organic looking, just because of where my head is and the kinds of things that I really enjoy and like. Yeah, I can already actually see what I want to do with this. So we've got a lot of blue. I'm going to go in. Some yellow. I like to use contrasting colors. Blue and yellow are pretty cool. They really work well together. Now again, because this is an abstract and you are the artist, you can use whatever color palette you prefer. I think the key to a successful abstract composition is not to use too many different colors. I think if you limit your colors and focus more on the textures and the shapes, you end up with a much more successful composition. So I'm just going to use the regular palette knife. So we've been doing a lot of horizontal lines and things like that. I'm going to change it up. I'm going to add vertical line. Now I have noticed a neat thing with this wax. It's got a really cool texture, and you can do some really neat stuff with it. Doing a bit of a tree line back here. I think I'm going to split that. instead of going straight across, I'm going to split it and do, we'll have two lines. Now, as you can see, it was getting really heavy and dark, but now I can go back in. This is the fun part about the wax, is I can scrape some of that away, and I can put some back in, and I can just keep playing with that and working with that until it's something that I'm happy with. I think I want to get a second dimension in there. And I know a lot of artists that use cold wax don't use brushes. They strictly use the little palette knives and things like that. I'm not your average artist, as you know if you've been watching any of my work. I'm gonna put in, you know what? You know what? I know what I want in here now. I'm gonna put some red in. I think the red is really gonna make this pop out. So I've got some cad red that I mixed in, and I've just mixed it in straight. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's great. I love that. That's exciting. That red almost glows. I'm going to put some in this little back area here. But I'm going to add some white to it just to soften it down. Because I want it to feel like this little section is further back. Like I said, even though this is an abstract, I still end up having some kind of organic element to it. So as I've mentioned also in other videos, it's important when you're introducing color to have it working in other areas as well. Just want to pull some of this down a little bit. I'm not sure if that's exactly the right tool that I want. Let me instead, let's use one of my fan brushes. I think that's what I'm looking for. There we go. Pull that down all the way down. Redefine that coastline in a minute. I'm just doing reflections. A little bit back here. Go back in with our dark color So down here is our water. I want to use some of that red in here also. Let's get white again. I like that. That's pretty cool. So again, normally at this point, I would wait a few days for the paint to dry a little bit. For this to completely dry, it would take a few weeks because the wax I've discovered actually takes a really long time to dry. But for the purposes of this video, I'm not going to wait that long. So we're going to go ahead and peel off the tape, which is really exciting. And terrifying, because I don't know what it's going to look like. So that was getting to be kind of ridiculous trying to do it with one hand. So I actually had to shut off the video and set it on the table so I could do it. Like I said earlier, normally I would do this when it's dry, so it's a whole lot easier to manage. Obviously when it's wet, you're going to get paint all over everything. Actually, it's kind of cool, really. What it looks like to me right now is that painting in the background is actually trying to break through the painting in the foreground, which is a really cool effect. I can see a few things that I'm going to cover entirely. I think if I cover this with the new painting, that's going to be a little more dynamic, and maybe even this here too. Let's cover that first one first. tree-like shapes back through here. A lot of just experimenting when you're doing this. Again, pull down a little bit of this red down into the reflection water. I think this area here I'm going to cover over with the water as well. Like I said earlier, this is all trial and error. There's no, when you go into something like this and you don't have a plan, you're just kind of seeing what works. It's fun, actually. And sometimes, I know me especially, I don't know about all of you, but for me, I tend to over plan my life and my daily activities and everything, and it's nice just to have a few moments where you're just, there's no plan, you're just exploring and trying new things, and there's no consequences really to this kind of exploring. Nothing bad's going to happen. The worst thing that can happen is you end up with something that you're not even happy with. But the beauty of this is you let it dry for a few weeks, and if you really hate that bad, you cover it over again. So really, it's not that tragic. So what I want to do now is there's some really hard edges here, which are fine. If you like that, then by all means keep it. I'm going to soften it a little bit. So I'm going to take a brush, one of my poofy end brushes, as you know I like to keep those. Put this off to the side, and I don't need it right away. And I'm going to start up here because there's a lot of paint in here, and if I don't want all that paint in there, I'm going to grab paper towel. Some people use a Q-tip to remove paint from areas where they don't want it. You can certainly do that too. I'm just using a paper towel, just wiping off the excess. Some of that paint I'm going to use, so I'm not going to stress too much. And I'm just going to work on these edges a little bit. And I need to get a nice dry rag to work from. So I'm going to be wiping off. I want to keep this brush paint free as possible, so all I'm doing is softening in an edge and not adding a whole lot of paint. there's a big area here that's supposed to be water. This is around these leaves that I had on the old composition. Let's just push that back in. Move that water down. All this new paint that I've been applying is all mixed with the cold wax. So not only does it give you that texture, but it also gives you that translucent feel and look, as opposed to the usual solid, non-translucent look of oil paint. Opaque. Just going to soften this a little bit right now. The nice thing about doing this too is it adds more depth as you're going. It kind of pushes back that section. So this leaf here is suddenly covered in some kind of mysterious, misty haze. I think what I find interesting about this is there's two very different styles going on in this composition. Obviously there's a very traditional like oil style, and then we've got our very abstract landscape style painting going over top of that. It's giving us a really unique look and feel. I'm not very good at self-promoting, but I'm going to mention this right now for anyone who's interested, who's doing the classes, or who just likes to watch the classes and not necessarily participate. Everything that I create in these classes is for sale. It's available for purchase. I may not get right away to posting it on my website. If it ends up something that you really do fall in love with, just send me an email and we can talk about how I can get the artwork to you. And when you look on my website, you'll see that there's lots and lots of other artwork available. I'm a fairly prolific painter, as they would call it, which just basically means I have a lot of paintings, I produce a lot of work. I just love paintings. So. To be honest, I would actually, if I didn't restrain myself, I'm actually restraining myself. If I didn't do that, I would have double the amount of work available that I do have available. This is actually the fun part for me, because you can really see just doing these small things. I'm going to keep this edge pretty sharp because we've got the light coming in on this side and it contrasts pretty heavy over here. Down here, I'm going to soften it a bit on this side. on the other side, I'm going to keep it fairly solid. And as you learn different skills, as you practicing painting is the best way to learn. I mean, you can watch my videos, you can watch other videos, you can take personal one-on-one in studio classes, you do all that stuff. The most learning that I've ever done and achieved has just been basically doing it. Just do it. Just grab your paints, grab your tools, your brushes, whatever it is that you feel comfortable using, and just paint. That's the best way to learn. And don't keep doing things the same way all the time. I know there's old school people out there that would say, oh, once you find a way that you're comfortable with, just stick with it and never do anything different. No, I disagree. The moment I started changing up how I was doing things and the different tools that I used and colors and techniques and processes is the moment that I made all kinds of discoveries like this one here. And that's where the learning really starts. Because even though I'm teaching right now, I'm also learning. Every time I create something new, I learn something new. And that's exciting for me. I think that's what keeps me coming back and keeps me wanting to paint more and more and more all the time. Is that every time I'm learning something new. And this one is such a fun little piece. I'm really excited about this. This is really cool. I really like that. It's so unique. So I think what I might do because I do want to keep some kind of composition consistency going on. Like I said earlier, the light is coming this way, and these leaves are consistent with that. This part is initially, this part not so much. So this part here, I'm actually going to grab some darker paint and create some shadow in there. And I can do that. I'm going to do that with my brush, and I'm going to use the waxed colors that I have. To me, this area here is not receiving a whole lot of light at all. So the last little bit I think I'm going to do with this is just take some of my lighter color, sort of a very pale yellow, and go in with a smaller brush add in a little bit of light here and there. I think that looks pretty cool, considering what we started with. So, as usual, the very last thing we're going to do is claim it by putting our signature on it. I think I'm going to put it right here. When you're signing your work, try to use one of the colors that you've used in the artwork. Not a hard, fast rule, but I like to do that. And there we go. And there's your first mixed media abstract landscape. Well, I hope you enjoyed your workshop. It was a lot of fun for me. I'm really pleased with the end result, and I think a lot of my followers are going to be a little bit shocked because it's a huge difference from the kind of things that I have been doing. But otherwise, I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, definitely send me an email. We can chat by email, or we can also do Facebook chat. I am here to help you out with any of these workshops. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.